Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Here's what we're looking at.
My children were poisoned by something that was banned 45 years ago.
Families in nearly 500,000 suburban Cook County homes may be at risk for hazardous levels of lead-based paint. We investigate.
100-plus police officers remain on the job despite making false reports. The city's watchdog joins us to explain her latest report.
Lawmakers are set to get a raise. What else is in the new state budget?
A bill aimed at closing loopholes in property tax sales is headed for the governor's desk.
And music, fashion, and photography is at the heart of an exhibition at the Art Institute. Now, our top story tonight, toxic lead-based paint was outlawed in 1978, but the threat of poisoning still persists. Last month, we reported on the problem that city health officials confirm is present in the majority of Chicago homes. Tonight, we turn our attention to suburban Cook County, where officials there say as many as 500,000 homes have lead paint hazards that present enormous health threats for young children. One mother says her kids were poisoned several years ago, and the problems have not let up since. 9-year-old Marshall Sontag is ready for summer. Next year, he'll be entering a new school district.
All right, ready?
His mother, Caitlin, worries about whether the school can offer an adequate individualized education plan. She says Marshall has been diagnosed with ADHD and a mood disorder that makes being in the classroom very difficult for him.
He gets very frustrated and he lacks emotional control. He just very much goes from 0 to 100 at the drop of a hat.
Marshall was poisoned by lead 7 years ago. Medical experts consider any blood level above 5 micrograms per deciliter of blood to be hazardous. During a routine pediatric appointment when he was 2, doctors measured Marshall's level at 59. An x-ray showed that Marshall had ingested paint chips. Cook County Health Department inspectors were sent to the family's apartment in Berwyn and found peeling paint on windowsills and hazards all over.
I had no idea that we were living in poison. We were paying someone to poison my family.
It was the second time inspectors had been called to the apartment. A year earlier, Zontag's middle son, Jackson, was found to have a blood lead level of 29. But Zontag says they told her the exposure was likely from household products, not paint. While it's impossible to trace Marshall's problems to one cause, medical experts have long warned lead exposure in children is linked to irreversible behavioral and cognitive issues. And much like Chicago, lead paint hazards are common in inner-ring suburbs, where the majority of homes were built before 1978.
When that paint cracks, it creates dust, and it only takes a little bit of dust to expose a child, and that exposure can impact their development.
Zontag says she moved her family out of their apartment after Marshall's diagnosis. County records show the landlord, Patricia Groves, was warned multiple times to abate the problem. Records show Groves moved to evict the family for failing to pay rent, even though they no longer lived there. We tried calling Groves and visiting the building, but received no response. It is unclear from county records whether or not the lead hazard was ever removed.
Working with a landlord who doesn't want to mitigate, it can be really difficult to gain compliance.
Deanna Dorica is Cook County's Director of Lead Poisoning Prevention. She says the county works with landlords to mitigate lead paint problems, but those who fail to comply are taken to court and charged fines. The Cook County Health Department says it investigated 179 units last year where children were found with elevated lead levels in their blood. Approximately 60% of those units had lead paint hazards, and only 30% of those achieved compliance by the end of the year.
We know that lead exposure is preventable. We know that if we were able to mitigate lead hazards before they harm children, we would be able to protect them from a lifetime of negative impacts.
Unlike the city of Chicago, Dorica says suburban Cook County has a program to proactively screen apartment buildings in high-risk areas and even foot the bill to mitigate the hazard. But Sontag says raising awareness is still an issue.
People really don't understand that this issue is still very much going on. They think that, oh, it was banned 45 years ago. My children were poisoned by something that was banned 45 years ago.
Cook County has a website called leadfreecookcounty.com for all of its programs pertaining to lead paint, and you can find that link on our website, where you can also view our stories on the lead paint crisis in the city of Chicago. Despite the attention right now on the threats posed by lead water pipes, Chicago Public Health Commissioner Dr. Allison Arwady says paint is still the #1 lead poisoning threat for children.
Paris, and now to some more of today's top stories. It was the deadliest Memorial Day weekend since 2015. 53 people were shot across Chicago, including a pair of toddlers. Chicago police say 11 people were killed, one of them fatally stabbed. The violence comes in spite of new Mayor Brandon Johnson's anti-violence efforts, an infusion of cash to neighborhood organizations, and 30 violence interrupters sent by the governor. Former candidate for mayor Jamal Green is calling on the city to spend $400 million to help curb violence and to vote against funding for the migrants.
We can make our city safer, but we cannot continue just playing politics, waiting on a holiday and saying, hey, we gave a few dollars out to a few folks, we're doing something, when we're not. Let's go into the neighborhoods, let's make critical investments. We can do this. Let's do this. City Council, Mayor Johnson.
Organizers are reconsidering various summer festivals in the wake of disruptions by groups of unruly teenagers. Ridgefest in July has been canceled by the Village Board because of, quote, safety concerns, disappointing fans of controversial rocker Ted Nugent. Tinley Park canceled the final day of its Armed Forces Weekend Carnival after police say a flash mob of 400 teenagers showed up at the weekend festival Saturday and started fights. Posen Park Fest Carnival and the Most Holy Redeemer Parish Carnival were also canceled. Tinley Park's annual Rib Fest will happen in July, but major security changes have been made, including adding walk-through metal detectors and implementing bag checks.
Demolition equipment was spotted at Arlington Park, the former racetrack that the Chicago Bears have purchased. Arlington Heights officials approved a permit for interior demolition of the 6-story grandstand and the adjacent 2-story office and jockey building last week. Permits are still pending for demolition on the exterior of the former racetrack's structures. Arlington Heights Village warns of increased traffic around the area, and an expected 20 to 30 trucks will be going in and out of the site each day.
Permanent outdoor dining in Chicago is one step closer to reality. A city council committee approved a measure to expand alfresco dining permanently as long as the ward's alderperson supports the restaurant's outdoor permit application. Taverns and bars could also apply, but would need to partner with a restaurant to feed customers. Expanded outdoor dining launched during the COVID-19 pandemic to help restaurants stay afloat. The proposal heads to the full Chicago City Council for a final vote tomorrow.
Coming up in the program, what's in the new state budget?
But first, Chicago Inspector General Deborah Witzberg and her latest report on city police officers. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Police officers who are found to have lied on the job or omitted crucial information are typically supposed to lose their badge. But a new audit by the city's Inspector General reveals the Chicago Police Department has allowed more than 100 officers who have filed false reports to stay on the job. Some were even promoted after being found to have lied. The IG's report also recommends changes in how dishonest officers are disciplined. And here with more on the findings in this new report is Chicago Inspector General Deborah Witzberg. Welcome to Chicago Tonight. Good to see you.
Thank you.
First of all, at issue here is Rule 14 in the police department. Explain to us, for the layperson, what Rule 14 is.
It is the Chicago Police Department's rule of conduct which prohibits false reports. It prohibits lying. And so it is the effective enforcement of that rule that stands between us and a world in which police officers get away with lying.
And I remember Rule 14 during the Laquan McDonald situation popped up a lot. Officers at the time were able to make statements, view video, and then change their statements. So how do you determine whether an officer has indeed violated Rule 14?
It's a high standard to prove a violation of the rule, and according to the collective bargaining agreements, the union agreements between members of the police department and the city, in order for a member of the department to have violated Rule 14, they must make a statement which is false, willful, and material.
And your report found that the police department currently employs a minimum of 110 officers that violated Rule 14. Why are they still on the job?
Well, that's a good question. That's one of the things we set out to look at. This inquiry was really about the extent to which Rule 14 is effectively enforced. So we started by thinking about, what effective enforcement looks like. And that really boils down to whether violations of Rule 14 are appropriately pursued, punished, and published.
And you find in these 110 cases, was it a little bit of all of it? Some of them weren't pursued, some of them just escaped punishment, and as you found, some of them were actually promoted?
Yeah, those more than 100 people, all of those are ones against whom Rule 14 violations were eventually sustained, but they were not fired. They were not separated from the department.
But legally, they're supposed to be.
They should be. And in fact, all of the agencies involved that constitute Chicago's police accountability system, that's the Bureau of Internal Affairs and COPA and the police board, have all made statements of their belief that firing is the right punishment for violating Rule 14.
And you found fault with some of the agencies investigating police misconduct. There's the Bureau of Internal Affairs in the department. There's the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, COPA, and then there's the police board. You've recommended firing every officer that you found to have violated Rule 14. Can they actually do that?
They can, and we made recommendations to each of these agencies to do their part, to walk the walk on the statements they've made. For BIA and COPA to recommend separation when they appropriately pursue Rule 14 violations, and for the police board to uphold those separations.
Again, is there any reason that the Chicago Police Department gave you for not upholding those violations that were found by the police board to have been actual violations?
The police department, we published the police department's response with our report, and so it's all there. I think, they appropriately note that each case is different, and that's right, the facts of each case are different, but the enforcement of Rule 14 and the appropriate punishment for violating it cannot vary. We cannot send the message that some lives matter and others don't.
And what are your specific recommendations for the department, for the investigative bodies, COPA, so on and so forth?
The top line recommendation is that BIA and COPA pursue separation of every member they find to have violated Rule 14. And then we make a number of adjustments, recommendations around adjusting investigative practices to get to the effective enforcement of the rule.
And is there any indication that CPD, you said their statement is included in your report, have they signaled a willingness to comply?
Well, they have signaled some willingness to follow some of our recommendations. One of the things we recommended was that if there are, in fact, members who continue to be on the job who have violated Rule 14, that they be removed from any assignment which might require them to write reports or testify in court, which they can't meaningfully do once they violated the rule. The department agreed to review those assignments, although they did not go so far as to commit to taking everyone out of those assignments.
On a macro level, what is the impact on the legal system to have these officers keep their jobs, to in many instances be on the street when they have been found to have either made false statements or lied?
I think it's really two things. One, it has an enormous impact on the criminal justice ecosystem. Those officers cannot testify in court. They cannot participate in the prosecution of crimes. We can't keep people safe from crimes we can't prosecute. So I think that's the first thing. The other enormous impact here comes in the vein of the legitimacy of the police department. We cannot ask people to trust a police department that lets people get away with lying.
All right. Chicago Inspector General Deborah Witzberg, a very interesting report and recommendations. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Lawmakers approved a new state budget over the weekend, and up next, we take a look at what's in it.
In some ways, Illinois is infamous. The state's got a bad reputation for corruption and fiscal malfeasance. But backers of a new state budget say they're turning that around. Republicans disagree. Amanda Vinicky joins us now to share more of what's in and what is not in the state's new spending plan. Amanda.
Brandis, while most folks were at least hopefully beginning to enjoy that sunny and gorgeous holiday weekend, members of the Illinois House were still at it. And even if the legislature decides to meet and debate until 2:30 in the morning, we are not going to let what they did go ignored. For instance, you might be interested to know that the price of a new car title will be going up by $10. That means come July, it's going to cost $165 for a certificate of title. Now that money is going to go toward updating Secretary of State technology infrastructure that an external assessment found to be very outdated. Of course, that's just an itty-bitty part of the $50 billion spending plan approved by lawmakers. Governor J.B. Pritzker has already said he's on board with it and is planning to sign it in time for it to take effect July 1st. Democrats who crafted the budget say it is both responsible and compassionate, even if it doesn't do everything they wanted.
No one in here, no one in communities is going to get everything that they ask for, because we simply don't have the resources to do everything that everyone is asking. The things that we're engaging in, we believe that we can sustain over time.
A few Democrats voted against it, as did every Republican. One freshman lawmaker, who's a former mayor and company CFO, says watching how the $50 billion plan was put together was both enlightening and frightening. Others complained the GOP was left out.
There's more hiding, shifting, obfuscation of stuff, I'll call it in this bill, that would make a three-card money dealer blush.
Amanda, besides this fee, any other tax increases?
No, at least not that I found as I'm beginning to scour through this 3,000-something page document. Lawmakers did promise that there were going to be no gimmicks. Again here, Republicans say there are some, like raises for legislators whose salaries will reach nearly $90,000 in a base pay. Now that's a pay bump of 5.5%, more than the 5% that's supposed to be allowed by law. So we'll see what happens there to reconcile. Also, the plan relies on Governor J.B. Pritzker slicing in half spending on a health care program for undocumented residents, something that, especially given his potential future political ambitions, critical lawmakers are skeptical he'll be able to do. And then you got the prospect of a recession looming. So Republicans say this budget's too tight and that it wastes money on pork projects that were given as enticements for votes. But you've got backers saying there is a lot to celebrate in the budget, which again, they say is balanced.
If you want to vote for credit upgrades for the state of Illinois, vote aye. If you want to vote to fund the public school children in your district, vote aye. If you want to vote to fund the cities, towns, and villages in your district, vote aye.
As she alluded to there, you've got increases going to education, to anti-violence programs, and then there are also millions to help with asylum seekers. With the budget taken care of, legislative session adjourned until fall, but some lawmakers say there is still unfinished business. Republican Representative Ryan Spain says after that ComEd trial revolving around former Speaker Michael Madigan, it's crazy action wasn't taken on ethics.
It is said that budgets reflect our priorities. And boy, I just cannot believe it, that we don't, all of us, place a priority on cleaning up the corruption that has been such a deep stain on the state of Illinois.
And also, Brandis, you had no movement on the troubled marijuana market in Illinois. The Bears, they did not get their subsidy as they're looking to move and get help as they go to Arlington Heights. And then the evolution of the Chicago elected school board, that also is going to have to wait for another legislative day.
Oh boy. Okay, so lots to come when that day comes. Amanda Vinicky, thanks as always.
Thank you.
Up next, details on another bill to help close property tax loopholes in Cook County. Heather Sharon with that story right after a look at the weather. What does justice for Emmett Till look like for you?
Justice for, in our sense, is to serve humanity.
Black storytelling is a huge part of our culture, and so we wanted to make sure we gave young writers the opportunity to share their stories.
I think it's important that people feel empowered and find a light within themselves, whether it's art or not, but if it can be sparked with an idea, I think that's the type of things that change the world.
Legislation designed to close loopholes in Cook County's property tax system is headed to Governor J.B. Pritzker's desk. The bill aims to stop a system that's helped fuel disinvestment in majority Black and Latino communities for generations. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with more. Heather, so this legislation is the result of a concerted effort by Cook County Treasurer Maria Pappas's office to revamp the systems designed to return distressed properties saddled with mountains of debt to productive use. What would change?
Well, when you don't pay your property taxes, the interest rate on that rises to 18% a year. This legislation would slash that in half to 9%. And Maria Pappas's office says that will save Chicago homeowners, or Cook County homeowners, I should say, between $25 and $35 million a year. A huge savings that will help people keep their properties and their homes.
The legislation, it's also set to revamp Cook County's property tax scavenger sale. What's in store there?
So if you don't pay your property taxes for 3 years, the county can auction off your property, and they held those sales every 2 years. But few properties that go up for auction in those sales are purchased and put back to productive use. So this legislation would give Cook County more ability to take control of the properties that don't sell and get them back on the tax rolls and put to productive use.
So the bill, it also takes aim at a loophole that allowed hedge funds to take advantage of unpaid tax debt at the expense of Black and Latino homeowners. How does it do that?
So every year, unpaid tax debt goes up for another auction, and big hedge funds and other investment firms, they buy that debt and put liens on people's houses, and that is lucrative for them. They can earn as much as 54% over the next 3 years. And then they don't actually have to complete the sale. They can just sort of point to an error, sometimes clerical, and get out of the whole deal and take those savings and interest payments with them. This law would sort of make it harder for them to get out of those sales at the last minute, and hopefully preventing them from preying on people who haven't been able to pay their taxes.
Okay, Heather Sharon, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. Paris.
Brandis, from Stevie Wonder and high fashion models to everyday people all over the world, a photographer helped capture Black beauty and power in the 1960s and 70s. His name was Kwame Brathwaite, and he died soon after an exhibition of his work opened at the Art Institute. Chicago Tonight recently visited the museum for a tour of the show. Here's another look.
I say he's essentially synonymous with the Black is Beautiful movement and to developing the aesthetic that we associate with it and creating the images that allow us to look back and understand its trajectory.
Kwame Brathwaite photographed jazz vocalist Abbey Lincoln, reggae giant Bob Marley, and he toured the world to promote Pan-African creativity. Seen here in a self-portrait in the 1960s, the artist and activist documented things well worth waiting for.
You really see this career developing over time and these connections made with various people, and just the richness of his engagement and his commitment to both documenting Black culture and celebrating it and creating it all at the same time.
Brathwaite organized fashion shows and concerts. He photographed album covers, and he used his darkroom skills to shed light on pivotal moments of positivity and empowerment.
He was passionate about black and white photography, really thought carefully about his printing and how to bring out Black skin tones, Black hair, and to bring out these tones and textures that film wasn't necessarily developed to process accurately.
A photographer for 7 decades, he found inspiration in music and musicians.
Throughout his career of making photographs, he's constantly reviewing albums, reviewing festivals, and music and photography for him are very intertwined. They're also intertwined at the level of composition. He was really interested in thinking about his photographs as responding to or relating to the rhythms of Black music. It's almost like you can hear the images sometimes. Something that I love about the exhibition is how, when you spend time with it, you can see the connections across various mediums and across various communities and moments and times.
Kwame Brathwaite died on April 1st. He was 85. The exhibition of his work is in the modern wing of the Art Institute of Chicago until July 24th. Discover more on our website.
Very cool pictures there. And that is our show for this Tuesday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Chicago's older people consider a $50 million plan to help care for migrants.
And a proposal for permanent outdoor dining in Chicago heads to City Council for a final vote. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thanks so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe and enjoy this beautiful evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.